Hi, I'm Chester Thompson. We're going to talk to you a little bit today. Different concepts of how to tune your drums, how to maintain your drum kit, just so you'll get a little more pleasure out of them.
And I'm Chet McCracken, and between Chester and myself, we're going to show you a lot of different concepts on how to make your drums sound good. And let me compliment Chester on his drum sound. I like it, but I also like mine, and I'm coming from a little different place than he is. So you stick around, and we'll show you a lot of different ideas. Snare drums. Snare drums can drive you crazy in your drum set. They're very agonizing sometimes and frustrating to get sounding just the way you want them. I've messed with this snare drum so that just about everything that can go wrong with a drum has gone wrong with this one. This is a 15x7 Pearl, and I've totally screwed it up. And Chester, show them what I did here.
This is a classic. We got the snares going every way but the right way. I think straighter is better. Nice ripples in the head there. You can't miss that. And we turn over here. We've got missing rod.
Yeah, that's always good.
A couple of loose. Oh, this one. Hey, we got one. We turn that one by hand. That's pretty bad. Man, they gotta hear it. They gotta know what the sound is.
Look at the dirt on that thing too.
Oh man.
I have trouble playing drums that are dirty. Okay, here goes. The sound of beauty here.
I think to preserve both reputations, you better get up a good one.
We'll show them the good concept here. Oh, better show them the underside here first. So what'd you say? That one had crooked snares. This one,
Yep.
they're
Nice
centered.
and even, centered.
Yeah.
No ripples in the head.
It looks like it's evenly tensioned. Let's see how this old Radio King sounds. Here, I hit the bad one. You hit the good one.
Nice.
That sounds a lot better.
It sounds like a snare drum.
Yeah. Great. Well, this is how not to do it, and this was how to do it. Even tension, top and bottom, snares straight, and no missing parts, and that's about it.
Yeah, I tend to, I do it a tiny bit differently. Let me throw one up. I go for an overall tighter sound.
Yeah, I do go for a little looser sound than you do.
One thing, which is, it's kind of critical on a snare, it's especially critical on a tom. I try to get like this an even tuning around the drum.
I mean, the same tone
Yeah,
at
I'm
each
going for the
lug.
same note all around.
Uh-huh.
You know what, this stand needs to come down because of the snare bit. That's okay, I can still hear the pitch, so that's fine. And sure enough, that one's real loose, but it sounds lower. You can count turns to a point, but then you got to fine tune it by trying to get the pitch even, you know. Even tension doesn't mean the drum's going to be in tune with itself.
Mm-hmm. Do you go by the tone, obviously, and the way that it feels at the tension?
Yeah. It's a combination of both. I mean, if it feels like this one's no tension at all, then it's going to be pretty strange to have it that way and then have everything else as tight as it'll go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You'll bust the head that way because it'll pull toward the
Right.
uneven tension.
I've done that.
And just to quickly give you a brief idea of the kind of sound I go for, be my guest here.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's beautiful. Quick response.
Yeah.
A lot of finesse on the edges.
Get you in trouble on a bad night, but works out most of the time.
What about the bottom head? How do you tune?
Pretty much the same as yourself. I get it pretty tight, real tight. I think the only difference in what we're doing, I tend to tighten the snares themselves a little tighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefer the snares where the snares actually go all across the drum,
Yes.
instead of stopping in the middle.
Yes.
And then I got to make sure they're even on each side where they actually touch the drum.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn this drum over and
Sure.
actually show them. This is a beautiful drum. Chester, obviously these snares go all the way across the shell, beyond the outer edges of the shell.
Yeah, I tell you, it's still the same principle applies though, because the snares have to be parallel to the drum. It's like you can't have one side sticking up, another one touching, because then it'll just rattle all night long. I think you've got one that's made the same way.
Yeah, this is a pearl. These are the new style. Actually, a lot of companies are coming out with them now. This is the old style, but whatever it is, they got to be flat and parallel.
That's it. That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about something. You remember you told me once that you packed the lugs on your drums?
Packing lugs on drums, yeah. I got into that. I was turned on to that by Shep Lonsdale, sound man for the Doobies. I said, what? And he showed me how to do it, and it was real subtle at first. Mm-hmm. At first, I didn't even notice anything happening, but all of a sudden, I have to do it. Inside each lug on a lot of the drums, the insides of these lugs are hollow. Like on your drum, there's 12 lugs per head, so that's 24 of these guys, and they've got a hollow sound. Mm-hmm. So when you hit that drum, this thing makes noise too. So the concept is to pack this little baby so it's real quiet, and all you're getting is the sound of the drum. So just find some, this is felt. You know, mm-hmm. I just cut up little pieces of felt and pack this guy until it was full. And you pull it all out, and it's just the spring that is in there. Yeah. A lot of the new drum companies are coming out, they're hip to this already, and they're coming out with the lugs, either solid lugs, like, I'll bet you those things are packed, or else they're
probably so.
Mainly
funny.
Solid.
I think if you're being mic'd, that really should make a lot of difference, actually.
I think it's, more evident when your drums are being mic'd and in the recording studio. But I do it to all my drums, and it's just habit now. Chester, another area that's really frustrating for myself and a lot of other drummers is muffling snare drums. The old snare drums ringing away, and your sound engineer at the club or your lead guitar player turns around and says, "Can you put something on that thing?" Show me what you do. Your drums sound so great. What's your tricks?
Well, the main thing I tend to do these days is the old donut, similar to what you've got on the Radio King. I guess these seem to be the two available kinds.
I love those, but those aren't always readily available for everybody.
Yeah, that's true. They work great because you go from that to that.
Yeah.
But there's
Instant
options.
relief.
You got these things, these clamp-on guys, and they work pretty good because they don't feel weird when you play. Get that on there, and you can adjust this particular kind. You go from that, still ringy, tighten it down a little.
This is kind of an exterior version of what sometimes comes inside the drum from the factory.
Right. I can't use the ones inside because I always feel like the drum's fighting against me. Like I'm hitting this way and the thing is pushing that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, I find it really uncomfortable. And of course, there's everybody's old favorite. When you can't get a zero ring or whatever kind you want to get, good old gaffer's tape. This is the stuff. There's a couple already done. I tend to do it. I let the corners go over the rim just a little, so it seats real good, and I just kind of flip it over there, mainly kind of to lock it in place, really. That's not drastic.
It's subtle. It's a little better.
Yeah, it's a little better. You end up needing maybe two pieces to come up with the same effect as using the ring.
Now you went opposite side of the head with that.
Yeah.
You do that on purpose?
Yeah, I find it's a little more balanced sounding. It's pretty subtle, but I find it tends to work better that way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of balanced.
Yeah. Bingo.
If it's real severe, I find that taking like a paper towel or something, I happen to have a paper towel here, just voila, your normal paper towel, just fold it up, and I make a little rectangular strip, and basically I just tape right down over top of that. This will be pretty severe muffling, actually.
That's if you really want to deaden it.
Yeah, we're probably talking recording studio where you're looking for the sort of fat, I'd lower the pitch of the drum a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just nothing breathing there. That's just, a nice tight sound.
Yeah. Tighten it up, too.
But I find that those ways work for me pretty well. Then you got the heads themselves.
Yeah, drum heads. That has a lot to do with the sound of your snare drum.
This is, there's Old Faithful, the kind of coated Mylar, which I guess this is coated Mylar.
Yeah, this is a version of, and I find that the coated drum heads bring out the high end, the snap, a little bit more than some of the other ones. Here's a version of a head with a dot. This one has more of a
Whoa.
the deeper, and I think it's inherent in the sound of the drum head as compared to the tight.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of the dance stuff when you want the big wet snare sound.
Yeah.
It seems to already have that sound.
What other kind of drum heads? Do you ever use the clear heads on snare drums?
I tend to agree with you on snare drums, actually. The coated seems to do something nice. Clears don't work out well for me for some reason. I don't know. I don't even understand why, because it should be basically the same thing, but it just does not seem to work as well.
I agree with that.
The thing about the ring, I notice a lot of times if I'm having to do, some of this kind of stuff, it never fails in the middle of a show at a critical moment. The back of the stick ends up flipping the ring up. The thing flips off the drum.
That's happened
Next
to
time
me.
I have to hit actual backbeat, then I've got this big ringy sound again. And so if I'm recording and having to play like sort of side stick rim shots, I tend to go with this, with tape as opposed to the ring. For general use, if I'm not doing that, I mean, obviously you can be careful and not do that, but if I'm recording, I don't want to be self-conscious about whether I'm going to lift the ring off, so I end up going with tape.
Sounds like we're in agreement about snare heads.
Chet, what do you do about snare rattle?
Oh, scratch my head. Yeah, it's a real bummer sometimes. You just don't know why your snares are rattling. Sometimes to cure it, I'll just pop the drum over and put a piece of tape there and put a piece of tape there. And in this case, with this drum, you see this snare missing right there. Sometimes if the snares are improperly tightened or tensioned, they're not flat, parallel like we covered before, it increases the snare rattle. And didn't you tell me one time about actually the tension of the bottom head has to do with...
Yeah, I've been in a couple of situations recording, and it was rattling, and I went under, found the bottom head was loose, tightened it, and it got rid of quite a lot of it. I do this in critical conditions. I do the same thing you do. The only difference being I tape it as close to the edge as I can get it with a very thin strip of tape, just for fear that I'll choke the sound of the drum if I go too much to the center.
Yeah, good point. The closer to the center you...
Yeah, and I find that if nothing else works, that seems to always do it. But I don't like to do it live, but in the studio, if you have to, you have to. But now everybody's got noise gates. So.
Yeah. Chester, I think we covered quite a bit of territory on snare drum tuning. And one more time, let me compliment you on your overall drum sound.
Well, thank you. Same to you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the next thing we really need to touch on is bass drums. That can be a real major problem, especially if you're back and forth between small clubs and large places, mic'd or not mic'd. There seem to be a lot of things that influence the way it sounds.
Definitely. I think what kind of room you're playing in is one factor. Obviously, some of the things that you need to think about is the front head. This drum has the big wide hole in it. I find that is best when you've got a microphone in there, or when you don't have a microphone. It seems to me, doesn't that kind of throw the sound out into the room, project it out, and you can actually hear inside that drum head, hear that beater hitting inside there?
Yeah, the only thing I've found about that, I'm becoming pretty convinced that it sounds better behind the kit than maybe in front. When I'm doing clubs these days, I tend to leave the front head on. For years I didn't, but more and more I do that. But it's still sort of a pain when suddenly I'm being mic'd again.
I've always found it to be a little different than that. Seems to me that the big hole in the front head kind of shoots that sound out into the room.
It really depends on the kind of sound you're looking for, what you want to happen. I mean, it's like basically what you do with that foot as well as with your hands is really going to make quite a difference as well.
True.
Like, I've never played around with different beaters. I've just always used felt beaters,
I've always been using this plastic beater, which the plastic against the plastic seems to have more of that top-end type of sound. I notice you use the same beater, but you use the other side. This beater does come with a little felt strip on it. I take the felt strip off because it it messes with the balance of the pedal for me. But the sound of the plastic against the plastic is a little different than the felt against the plastic. I can't use the felt because the balance is wrong for me.
Big difference in sound,
Yeah.
I'm finding the heads make quite a lot of difference. Like sometimes I'll use a coated plastic head on the bass drum. That supplies a lot of the high-end slap. In fact, I almost have to do it that way because I do use the felt in order to get the high end out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's funny because when I am being mic'd, the engineer with Genesis lately, I mean, I've had to actually completely cut the front head almost all the way out. He doesn't want any resonance. He wants nothing but slap, to get to that mic.
Yeah. I found with this plastic beater of mine, the plastic against the plastic gets the sound just the way I want it, but it heats up. It actually creates heat,
Really?
and it wears out the drum head a little faster. So, I go through drum heads. So I compromise and get this style of drum head with a dot on it, double coated. And another thing I do is when this beater wears out a spot in the drum head, fortunately my beater doesn't hit it in the center. It hits it off center. So I play it for 2 months and wear a little spot in that side.
Great.
Then I crank that head 45 degrees and I wear out a new spot. It's like I extend the life of it as far as I can.
It's funny, I noticed when I'm not being mic'd, I used to always use the little moleskin pads.
Mm-hmm.
You use those? You can just go to any drugstore, right? Dr. Scholl's moleskin and cut out a
Right.
little piece and stick it right on there. What's inside the drum makes a big difference. For me, the ideal is a down pillow rather than a foam pillow, although I must admit I've done some gigs where I sort of borrowed everybody's jacket in the band because I didn't have something to put in there.
Packing blankets.
Yeah,
and,
whatever, but
Yeah.
down being the favorite, but sometimes it's whatever it takes to get the job done.
They have some products on the market, the little foam rings. I haven't used those myself. I use a pillow also. Inside my big 26-inch bass drum, I got the head so loose on that one, I just have a small tablecloth that just kind of floats in there. But that's a totally different sound concept than what we're talking about here.
That's true. Yeah, I noticed when we were playing, there's a very different sound, real big sound, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the pedal now, it's like it's funny. I think we both work enough with younger players that somebody always complains about their pedal, and I think it's one of those things where if your pedal feels too hard, then loosen it. Just go all the way loose and see if that's closer to what you got in mind. I think just kind of float back the other way until you find that happy medium. But I think you mentioned you'd experienced the same thing. Some kid thought your pedal felt great and his felt like something it would take King Kong to push down.
Yeah, he asked me, he was playing my kit, it was one of my students, and he says, "Why does your pedal feel so great?" I says, "I don't really know, it just, it really works for me. It's balanced, it's kind of like this camera boom we got out in front of us. You just touch it and the thing moves with the greatest of ease. That's the way I like my pedal. Look at that. I watch it come back to place. And,
Wow.
To me that's a work of art, but it works for my foot.
Yeah, mine with the spring would actually snap quite a lot quicker than that. But a lot of times I use double bass, so my left pedal is very much like that because the left foot's not as strong. But with the right one, I want some resistance there.
And your foot technique is impeccable, so it must be right for you. It's
Well,
not
for me, we look at Phil, right? And like I said, his beater's only that far from the bass drum, no tension on the spring whatsoever.
And it works for him.
Man, he can slam it,
As I was developing, though, I found out, I remember there was about 3 years in the early stages of me learning how to play a foot pedal, that I was always changing the tension on the foot pedal. I think as your technique grows, your touch with the foot pedal changes. So to get back to what you were saying, if it doesn't feel right to you, change it until it does feel right.
Yeah, I remember the same thing when I first started playing. Every week I'd play weekends, and then I'd set the drums back up, say on Mondays at home. And every week, man, I had a different setup. I was just always looking for the right setup. I changed pedals, I changed the height, everything would, at some point would get changed.
I think your body is changing too.
Yeah.
Well, the bass drum sound, what else can we talk about? The front head, got a hole in it or not to have a hole in it? You like it?
Mm-hmm.
Two heads.
Size makes a difference, I think. I mean, you got that big 26, that thing is going to speak.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, but there are going to be those guys that want a tight, really solid smack of a sound. You know? For them, a 20 or a 22 is going to be the one.
Yeah, Knudsen, Keith Knudsen, the drummer in the Doobies, I played alongside with him. He used the 20-inch kick drum. At that time, I was using a 22. And many times, his little 20 would just, be the best sound in the hall that night. Just because he knew how to tune it and knew how to kick it, too.
Yeah, I mean, there is no right and wrong, is there? I mean, you got to do what sounds good for you and what's comfortable for you.
For the kid, though, right out of the box, right into his first drum set, would you recommend a 22-inch kick drum?
I think 22 is pretty much the average. I think that covers most territory.
And leave the front head on? Until he breaks the back one, then he switches.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, again, depends on what you put in the drum. Like I say, when I'm doing clubs these days, I put a pillow in, but I put it in side to side, and I get a real nice big sound. If I'm going to mic it, like today I've got a front head on, but I've got the pillow in front to back, and I'm miking the back head.
Tightens it up.
It's a very tight sound. But I find it's so tight that if I'm playing a club and I'm not being mic'd, it doesn't cut through. But when I turn that pillow sideways, it cuts through beautifully.
Chester, I think what we're saying here is if your bass drum is not sounding right to you, experiment with it. Change it. Do everything you can think of to make it right. Change the beater, change the pillow to a blanket, change heads if you can afford all this, but do something until it feels right to you, and then it is right. There really is no right or wrong. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. And if at some point that no longer feels right, experiment some more.
Tom-toms. I love tom-toms. They're a lot of fun to play, and one of the more fun elements of the drum set. They can be very melodic, they can be very big and fat, and very expressive. They're a very emotional part of the drum set. Your drum fills can really make some kind of statement for you in your drumming style. But there's so many different drum heads to choose from on the market today. There's pinstripes, clear with dots, diplomats, coated ambassadors, Duralines, there's just all kinds of things. Again, as Chester and I have said already, whatever is right and sounds good for you, that makes it correct. In front of me is a drum from a set I have in my studio. It's an 11 by 13, and oddly enough, it's got some drum heads on it that I don't normally use, but in this particular case, they're working well for me. A coated ambassador on the bottom and a pinstripe on top. This drum has all the characteristics of tone and sound that I want from a tom-tom. It's got lots of nice attack. It's got a big, fat, round sound, and that sound goes ooh when I hit it. And check this out. Now, to me, that is a good-sounding tom-tom. Let me show you from beginning to end how I tune up the bottom head and the top head. Here's a drum that has some of my favorite heads. I can't say they're my favorite because I just told you I like those. But inside, for muffling, there's no muffling on this drum except for the homemade donut that I got inside the drum. Yeah, inside the drum. It floats on the bottom head, and it does the slight bit of muffling of the overtones on the bottom head for me. I don't use any on the top head. But real quickly, I go around the bottom head. This head is from scratch here. It's loose. And at this point, I'm just going from tension, how the lug feels to me when I tighten it up. And right now, I'm getting them all to feel the same. I haven't tested the drum yet for pitch. I'm just trying to get them all to feel the same. Now I check it for tone. Not quite there yet. So again, at this point, I'm just using the feel of the resistance from the lug. Now I've got it just about there, so now I'll go back up to the top head. Now this one is the same, it's very loose. At this point, it's just tension, the resistance from the lug, getting them all even. You notice I go around opposite just to keep it all uniform. Now I can hear, as the key hits the drum, I can hear the tone coming out of the drum. That tells me where the pitch is at. That's pretty good. See how quickly I did that? Most of it was just resistance or pressure from the lugs. Now they're both about both heads are about the same, the pitch. But for me it's a little low, so I'm going to raise this top head just a little bit more. Now let's hit it with a stick and see what it sounds like. Now that's pretty good, but it doesn't have quite the dip I want. I want a little more sweep. So to accomplish that, I'll take one lug and turn it maybe a quarter turn. Hear the sweep increase? If it's not quite enough, I'll try a different lug and see what happens. There it is. You can hear the tone. It starts up here, it goes down probably about a third or a fourth interval. That's a quick lesson on how to tune up a tom-tom. Chester, from our discussions earlier, you seem to have a different concept about tuning, one that is very interesting to me. It's totally different than what I use, but it sounds great, and from the sound of your drums, it definitely works.
Yeah, what I do that's different, I tend to tune the bottom head a little looser, actually quite a bit looser than the top. I start out by getting the bottom head on. I get it pretty much almost as loose as it'll go, but I'm very careful to go around it, make sure it's not rattling anywhere. I try to get the pitch close. It's not critical that the pitch is exactly even around the drum, but if it's too uneven, then the drum doesn't sing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I use the bottom sort of as a tone control. When I go to the top head, I like it quite a bit tighter, mainly because I like a tight playing surface. I want the sticks to jump back, you know, so I can get things done. I find because I've tightened the top head, the bottom head sort of compensates for it. Generally speaking, I try to get it the exact same pitch around the top head so that it doesn't sweep in either direction. I actually like it to be pretty constant.
Mm-hmm.
I think that came out of lots of sessions where there'd be just lots of frustrations from engineers saying the drum is ringing, you know, the drum is ringing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. What I finally realized, though, sometimes the drum will be out of tune with itself. The way you deliberately loosened a couple to make it sweep down, that's like using that concept the proper way. If you're not aware of it, you can have one rod too tight, and you hit the drum, and you get a weird note that hangs after the drum.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same pitch as the drum.
Right.
And that seems to be the thing that really annoys to a microphone. By the time it comes through the speakers, it's really bad news.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like feedback sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why what I do, I just kind of thump my finger around the drum. I mean, you can tap lightly with the stick. You can just kind of go.
And check for different notes.
And like I said, on my own drums, I'm trying to get the exact same pitch around there.
same
On there, you
pitch.
can hear the two where you loosened them.
Mhm.
Because that's what you did it for.
Mhm.
The most effective way to hear it is actually just place the finger on there and just go.
Mm-hmm.
And you really hear exactly what pitch is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Head-wise, I will use these days either an ambassador or an emperor on top, transparent. I tend to use a transparent ambassador on the bottom. I've not actually tried a diplomat. I'm real curious. As soon as I get home, I'm going to try it and see how it sounds. I use the ambassadors when I need it to cut through more. It has a real sharp edge, real sharp attack to it. When I'm doing, you know, sort of hockey rinks and giant sort of rock concerts, the drums really need to cut through because everything is so amplified and so electronic sounding that it's just real necessary that the toms really cut through with an edge to them. The Emperors, I prefer them actually because there's a slightly warmer thing. They still cut through, but there's something warmer and thicker to the sound. A lot more body to the sound, which is what I prefer. My favorite actual head, which I haven't had a chance to use for years, is a fiber skin too, because it really imitates a calfskin head, which is what I started out playing. But these days, unless I'm doing a jazz gig, I can't get away with using them because they just don't cut through enough. But again, like you said, it's a real personal thing. I mean, it's still back to the concept we had talked about of experimenting to find what works best for you. Usually I like really oversized drums, which is why I loosen the bottom heads. If I got a big drum, I don't want it to sound like a bongo. You know what I mean? If I got big drums, I want them to sound like big drums.
Well, you're talking about keeping the drum tune within its range.
Yeah, exactly. And because of the way, like I say, the playing surface plays a very key part for me because I really want that response. So I have to compensate, like I say. You find that the bottom head works really like a tone control. If you tighten up the bottom head real tight, the drum is going to have a very high, trebly kind of sound. If you loosen that bottom head, it's going to get deeper and deeper. Because of that, you do need to go around the bottom head and make sure it's fairly even, because it'll make the whole drum have really weird overtones if you don't do that.
Chester, they've seen me tune up from scratch here. I have my ways, you have your ways. Show us how you do yours.
Okay. I just happen to have a Thompson over here. Yeah, I've done the same thing. I've loosened it pretty much to where it's, it's a lot looser than I would actually play this size drum. Okay, so what I'm going to do first of all is go around the drum, very much like what you're doing, except I'm really feeling for a lot less pressure, a lot less tension on it. I'm not wanting very much on the bottom at this point. So I'll very lightly go around, check to see where it is.
Checking for evenness in tone right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it pretty even all the way around the drum. Even though it's on the bottom, I still want it fairly even so it's not drastically different from one point to the other.
Yeah.
Because you'll still hear that when you hit the drum. Okay, then I turn it over. Now, this contraption on here, by the way, is a rim's mount. Basically, instead of using a tom holder that goes through the center of the drum, I'm using this. The holder attaches here. This is onto the rim of the drum by these rubber bushings so that there's no metal touching the drum, you see. So that's the whole point of this thing. All right, once I'm up here, then I'll go around. I'll see where the drum is. Still quite a bit too loose for me. I go around it. I'll bring it up just a little, but then I'm going to check each rod again to see where it is and then try to get as close as I can to the same pitch all around the drum. One other thing I know we both do that we didn't talk about earlier, when there's a new head on the drum, make sure you stretch it out real good, okay? That's because it's like a guitar string. It's going to stretch as you play it, and if you don't do that first, in the middle of the set, it's just going to start stretching and sounding real weird on you. And whereas you're looking to deliberately detune a couple of rods, I'm trying to get them all pretty much the same.
I had a drum roadie one time that used to stand on the drums, the new heads. That would instantly seat the drums.
Yeah,
I don't recommend it, but...
How big was this guy?
He was about me, kind of skinny.
Yeah, Phil used to do that until he gained weight.
So you're still checking for evenness?
Yeah, I'm still going around. That's pretty close. So that's
sounds great.
a tiny bit of a pitch bend, which is really the difference between the top and the bottom head. Normally I will still go back to the bottom head and find out where the difference is and fine-tune that a little. The basic concept for me is that there's a thing I'll show you real quickly, though, how much difference it really does make. You hear how this drum sounds here. If I go down here to just one rod at the bottom and play around with it, it shows dramatically how much difference the bottom makes.
Let's
you know?
hear that. it's very obvious.
So it's, it becomes, you can see just how important it is to do something to that bottom head. You can't just sort of throw it on there and leave it, to random, But that's, like I said, that's kind of the basic way. Obviously, if I'm in a situation in a studio or something and it really does call for something different than what I normally do, then you got to be willing to go along with it.
You got to satisfy your producer.
Exactly.
These rim mounts, really, they kind of isolate the drum and suspend it.
Yeah, the drum tends to resonate and ring just a little bit more, which is what I like. I actually want my drums to really sing out. I've noticed, especially recording, but live as well, especially with recording, the tape moves so quickly that if that drum doesn't sustain, you don't hear anything come back. If it doesn't sustain for at least a certain amount of time, you're going to lose half of that anyway in the mix, and just as the tape is moving so fast. I got really tired of hearing my drums sounding like boxes, and I wanted them to sing out. That's
we play drums, not boxes.
Exactly. That's it.
That's a very nice sounding drum. You got a very nice concept of tuning.
Yeah, well, it works. Just that white one there sounds fantastic. So, like I said, we can't, we really just can't say you're wrong and I'm right.
We're both right. We get to
exactly. That's it. When you don't like it, then don't settle for it. That seems to be the one.
I think the concept is the same here as with maybe the bass drum thing we talked about. Keep messing with it, keep experimenting until it sounds right to you.
Yeah, I think that's the way it is. That's the only way you're going to know even,
And of course, hitting the drum properly, snapping it, drawing the tone out of it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because otherwise if you don't do that, instead of this, you get...
As you've seen, there's an art to tuning a single tom-tom. But what do you do when you have 4 or 5 tom-toms in your drum set? What you do is you make them sound as musical and melodic as possible. There's an art to it. And Chester is going to show you how he's done that right now.
All right. Well, first, this is how they're tuned. I'm not really going for specific notes as much as I look at the size drums I've got available, and I want a logical sweep from the smallest to the lowest. So I've got 5 toms to work with, so I'm going. One thing that's kind of important for me in solo situations, I like the idea of being able to play melodies and even imply harmony with the toms, which means they got to relate to one another. So you get things like... Now that we've got the toms tuned, we've got the snare tuned, we've got the bass drum tuned, Chet and I are going to proceed to some basic instruction, help you enjoy these great sounding drums you now have.
Here's a groove that's a lot of fun to play. It can be very elementary or it can be kind of technical. But I'm going to start out showing you from the elementary point of view. It's based on 16ths. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... Put some snare drum in there, you put some kick drum in there, it can be kind of funky. Listen to this. Now the key with playing this beat effectively is floating on this hi-hat. And to do that, we have to have a good grip on our drumstick and play this hi-hat correctly. We don't want to be flailing away at this hi-hat. Actually, the tip of the stick is bouncing on the hat, and you're kind of accenting on the 1E, 2E, 1E, and 2. And it's a very nice floating motion in your hands, like this. As compared to you're fighting the hi-hat like that. So just kind of float like a butterfly up here on your hi-hat. And you can get kind of inventive downstairs. keep the hi-hat going the same time, but we double up on the snare, we can actually play 2 time signatures with this one technique. Adding a little bass drum, it'll sound like this. What you're doing here is you're developing a little funk technique and a little rock technique. And to put a little funk and rock in both those, it could sound like this. Doing here is I'm maintaining the same tempo, which is always important as a drummer, maintaining the same tempo on the hi-hat, but I'm changing time signatures down below. And if you can learn to do this effectively, you can control your time where you don't learn to rush. You're switching gears, so to speak. Sometimes we have a tendency to rush or drag, but practicing this technique with this particular beat eliminates those tendencies to rush or drag. So when you're switching from cut time to half time, you're floating out like a butterfly here on this hi-hat, and you're maintaining the same tempo all the time. And remember, don't try to overplay this hi-hat. Make that drumstick bounce on the hat. Okay, another thing that I think is very important for beginning drummers to master is the concept of rudiments. Now, rudiments can be kind of boring. You just sit around, play them on your snare drum. But make them interesting, make them fun. Transfer them to your drum set. Make a groove out of them. Case in point, the lovely paradiddle. Paradiddle, right, left, right, left, left. It sounds like this. I'm going to spread this out on my toms so you can hear the difference in the sticking. Alone on the snare drum, it sounds like this. Now you notice I put a big accent on one hand, two hand, one hand, two hand. That gives it a little flow. Now, if we transfer that to the drum set to make a groove out of it, once we get a smooth paradiddle on our snare drum, transfer it to your drum set. Think of it as a set rudiment. Like maybe put your right hand on your hi-hat, put your left hand on your snare drum, and kick a little bass drum with it. It becomes a lot more fun than just keeping it on the snare drum. You become a lot more creative, a lot more imaginative. There are a couple of basic elementary drum techniques that I have enjoyed. They've really helped my drumming. I hope they help yours. Now here's Chester to show you a couple of his concepts.
I'd like to talk to you about how to get around the drum kit in a way that makes sense. Practical ways to do fills and just to travel around the kit so you don't get in trouble and get your hands hung up. The first place to start is just a very simple 2 beats each drum around the tom. If we're going to go from left to right, then the right hand should lead. So we're going. If we're coming back the other way, the left should lead. Sounds very simple, but there are times when it gets a little bit more complicated than that, and that's what we'll talk about. For example, the thing that Chet mentioned is a paradiddle, which is a very practical way to reverse directions and get yourself out of trouble. So if we go around this way, then the practical thing would be to play a paradiddle. So we're actually going to play 4 beats on each drum. Okay, what I'm doing when I get to the extreme ends, the smallest tom and the largest tom, I'm playing a paradiddle to reverse direction. So if I've come here with 4 beats, if I play 4 alternating beats, and I want to come back the other way, it's not going to work unless I cross over, and that's going to just cause trouble. So it's better to play 4 strokes alternating. When I get here, play a paradiddle, right, left, right, right. Then I can come back alternating. The same thing holds true with triplets. You want to start with the hand that's going to go in the right direction. If I'm going back and forth, for example, I want to start with the left here and the right here. So it's... With practice, you can build it up to a reasonable speed. So what I'm going to do is play a fill, and I'm going to first play it going in one direction, then I'm going to come back and play the same fill coming in the other direction, which means I'm going to have to reverse the hands that I'm using. The same principle holds true for which hand you're going to play a crash with on the cymbals. If you're down here at this end and your crash cymbal is over here, it's going to be awfully hard to get there with the right hand. So if you got 4 beats to work with, and this is not the right sound you want, which very often happens, a paradiddle is the answer. A good way to get used to doing that, to learn your way around the drum kit, is to actually start off, the easiest way is to play 4 beats on each drum, then we're going to drop it down to 2. 2 is actually a lot more difficult than playing 4 beats on each drum. So we're going to start off with 4 and just slowly raise the tempo. Come back the other way with the same thing. Now I'm going to do it with 2 beats on each drum. Same thing coming back. Now, you'll probably find the first few times you try this, you're going to get a little bit hung up. You're going to find your sticks getting caught. I'll show you how to get around that. For example, if I'm trying to get down to this floor tom, I'm going to go. But if I get hung up, so it's like right here I got hung up. The proper way to learn to get around that, just go back and forth slowly. Then I go back and add the first one. Okay, now I'm going to add this one. Start off slowly. Okay, I deliberately stumbled here. So the way to practice that is to just stay in this one area. Then go back and add one. Until I can do all 4 evenly.
Okay, now to go back and look at how to change directions, let's go back and do 4 beats instead of 3, which means we have to use paradiddles. So if we want to go from this tom to this one, from the floor tom up to here, the best way to get 4 beats on each drum is going to be to use paradiddles. Start off real slow. You'll soon find that you can get anywhere you want around the drum kit. The real key to practicing this, or pretty much anything else, you have to start off slowly. You have to start off real even. You want to gradually get a little bit faster, but you never want to play faster than you can play even. It's real bad news to play fast but sloppy, because if you practice that way, you will always play that way. So take the time, don't be in a hurry. Just take your time a little bit at a time, and each day if you practice it, even though you don't notice it at first, each day you'll get just a tiny bit faster. So like I said, you'll be able to just get around the drums and get anywhere you want. So what it comes down to is a little bit of common sense. If you're going to go to the right hand should lead. If you're going to the left hand should lead. Doesn't matter whether you're playing a fill from the snare or from the toms or whatever. When you get into a jam and you need to change direction, remember a paradiddle is usually the best way out, which all it really comes down to is you double 1 beat. If you can't go here, then you double the right. I hope that'll help you to enjoy your drums a little bit more.
That was great, Chester. I learned something about getting up and down my tom-toms. I'm going home to practice that right now. This concludes the instructional portion of this tape. For myself, I'd like to thank everybody behind the camera, everybody at Starlix, and especially Chester Thompson. And as Chester said, I hope this helps you have more fun with your drum set.
Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Really enjoyed working with you. Hope you enjoy this, and remember, practice, practice, practice.